rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is American Perspective with your host, I am Rick Thomas. Hello, everyone, and for those of you who caught last night's broadcast, yes, that is correct. I broadcasted last night. So here's the deal, really quick, before we get into the entire thing for tonight. I am trying out, I am testing, I am playing with doing a 5-day a week, or in this case, it's 6-day a week broadcast. So what I am doing is I am playing around with the idea of going to a Monday through Friday. So for the next month, next 30 days, okay, roughly, I will be broadcasting Monday through Saturday. So that's basically every single day except for Sunday, okay? Now, the Wednesday broadcast and the Saturday broadcast will actually be exactly the same. They will be, the typical 90-minute broadcast with the usual stuff in them if I can get them to go. But the other broadcasts, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday ones, I will try to keep them down, to about an hour. Again, this is in the business, we kind of call this a soft launch. This is like a soft, an attempt and a try. Now, there's no guarantee that I'm going to keep this going because I still have a couple things I need to figure out outside of the show itself. But the entire purpose of doing this is to expand my reach and expand my listener base. You guys are all absolutely fantastic. Okay, fantastic. But I want to expand and grow the show. I've got to get it bigger and better and, of course, get more people up on this show. I want to make this thing a big thing to the point where I can do this, 100% all for you guys. Now, here's the deal. The Monday through Friday, including Wednesday, will start at 5 p.m., okay? 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time, all right? So those shows, Monday through Friday, again, will be 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Saturday will stay at the 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock slot, the 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern slot. So that one will stay there. And no, Amy, it's not that I don't like you guys anymore. You guys are the original OG Whiskey Warrior crew, and I am not going to leave you. I am just trying to expand and get bigger so that I can be around a lot more, for you folks. And that is the intent. I didn't want to necessarily make this a huge deal because, again, this is a trial run. We're going to try it for 30 days and see what happens. If things work out correctly the way that I think it will probably continue. But I got to kind of get used to it, because I'm not used to it. So I got to work things out in my personal life and those kinds of things. So there we go. All right. So that is what's going on. And so I will see you guys tomorrow night if you want to. Join in. I will see you guys tomorrow night, Friday and Saturday, this entire time. So yeah, there we go. And so now let me go ahead and, I see some of the usual folks. It looks like Music Man just went through a loss. My apologies. My condolences there. Music Man's over on Rumble, and my condolences there. And then I also saw a couple people earlier who were chatting that had anniversaries. So congratulations to the anniversary folks. So yeah, and Judge, of course, over on Rumble says he does three shows a day and 5 shows on Sunday. That is a heck of a schedule. But I'm sure that you may not have something else that goes along with that. So anyway, so that is the deal. All right. So we're doing this. We're giving it a trial run. It'll be an every day, 5 days a week, and the Saturday. So Saturday show for now. So it's a 6 days is what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. So Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Saturday will stay at the 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time slot for everybody who's over in the East Side. So if you missed me last night, you'll have to go back and check out last night's show. It was, I won't say it was one of my best, but that's okay. I can work with that. All right, so let's get things going tonight for the pledge, which if you are of a mind to please stand, remove your hat, and join with Buddy Weiser from Rumble in performing, who is performing tonight's Pledge of Allegiance.
I hereby pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation under one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all her citizens. So help me God.
Thank you, Buddy, for the pledge. If you want to get you saying the Pledge of Allegiance, you need to come on over. No, you need to what you need to do is you need to record yourself reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in your style, whatever it is, and send me the audio file by sending it to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. And you can send me that audio file. I honestly, some people have asked me what format I want it in. I can pretty much cover just about anything. So just send it to me and I will go ahead and convert it if I need to. Or if I can't, then I'll reach back out to you and we'll get that taken care of. All right. So tonight, of course, it is Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And for tonight's whiskey, I am drinking Knob Creek. Knob Creek 9-year Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. And you know what's kind of funny is Mrs. Whiskey went through and she grabbed a few of the bottles that I am not that great of a fan of. You guys haven't seen them here on the show very much. But my wife grabbed those and took them over to my son and his friend's house for that. And of course, the whiskey tonight is in the glass, the True Grit Roots Network, old-fashioned rocks, whatever glass you want to call this. And that is for tonight's drink of choice. That's some good stuff there. All right. So let's see. All right. Oh, yes, I remember now. Let's go ahead and talk about True Grit Roots Network. I got lost there for a minute. TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, TGRN.net. You guys need to listen to our TGRN Blues 24/7, 365, all blues channel. And you know what? I've been so focused on the live show that we sponsored that I forgot to tell you. We've picked up a new on-air personality. His name is Pat Mighty Quinn. And Pat has a new show that is aired or is airing on TGRN called Cruisin' on the Blues Highway. Now listen to this. For Cruisin' on the Blues, Pat used to listen to a bunch of different artists going all the way back to the late 60s. And Pat had two older sisters that introduced him to several artists and bands like Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, and then, of course, in the 1970s, he discovered so much more. Now, what he does on Cruisin' on the Blues Highway is he plays a lot of guitar-driven artists on his show, which a number of listeners have told him how much they appreciate the fact that he features those types of artists. Especially ones that they can't hear on or find on other stations. So Pat says the blues is here to stay, and he guarantees it. Go check out the Cruisin' on the Blues Highway, airing Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Central Time, with an encore presentation on Saturdays at 4 p.m. That is 6 p.m. Central Time on Thursdays for the initial airing, and then an encore presentation Saturday at 4 p.m. Central. That is Cruisin' on the Blues Highway, our latest addition to our on-air personalities from Pat Mighty Quinn. And believe me, folks, you have got to listen to these, to the rest of our show. Go and check us out. TGRN.net is where you can download our app, and also you can listen online through the web at that same spot, or you can find us on the Live 365 catalog of digital radio stations, as well as the Audacity, AUDACY, Audacity app. And so there you go. That is a fantastic thing. And of course, TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, is out of Austin, Texas. And we appreciate every single one of you for listening to us. All right. So let's move on and get to the rest of the show. All right. Everybody knows about these wonderful sit-ins and thought and stuff that's going on with, these pro-Palestinian protesters all over the country. I mean, let's face it, they're taking over universities everywhere. It started at Columbia, but it's and that seems to be where it's, very very publicized, of course, because it's happening in New York City. But the thing about it is that it's popping up everywhere, including down in Texas, Austin. It's showing up down there. Now, a couple of things that have really presented themselves, let's say, throughout this is there have been some observations. For an example, there have been some overhead or high up shots, pictures that have been taken. I got to be careful with just using the word shot and Palestine together, but there were some overhead photos or high up photos taken. And one thing that was very noticeable at Columbia University was the fact that the tent city seemed to appear to be made up of a bunch of tents that all looked exactly the same. And so that's making people think that maybe these are coordinated. Which, I mean, why anybody would have to look at the tents to think that these are coordinated is beyond me. This is entirely coordinated. Now, if you folks remember, 4 years ago, right around the time that George Floyd died because he ingested too much fentanyl, there was the George Floyd riots that started and swept this entire nation to the point where we actually had the quote unquote summer of love that was going on during that time. And yeah, it's, well, let's just say if things are coordinated and this is a precursor to what we can expect, this is an election year, by the way. Just for those of you who don't know, this is an election year. And so therefore, yeah, don't be surprised if this stuff starts continuing on and on and on. And one of the things that I do find interesting with regards to this is the fact that Texas, I don't know if anybody's seen any of the video coming out of Texas, but Texas has taken their typical no-nonsense stance with some of these. They actually they actually went and started breaking it up in Austin, and Governor Abbott was not taking any crap from these folks. And honestly, I think he even was talking about deploying the National Guard. Now, for those of you who watched last night's show, I kind of mentioned that there was another famous governor back in 1964 that took care of a bunch of protesters at the University of California, Berkeley, when they burn a bunch of, or, they were protesting some sort of construction or whatever. I don't remember. But anyway, the point being is that, yeah, they need to make sure that they handle these folks, especially if they start getting violent. Now, somebody might say, hey, you're an American patriot. You're a man of the Constitution. You know that the First Amendment talks about having the right to peacefully protest. Well, here's the thing, is that the peacefully protesting part is the key. Now, when you start assaulting other members of other ethnicities or other, blocking up traffic, preventing people from going around, all of these other things, your peaceful protest now has turned into something different. And this is part of the problem with you folks. Look, if you look at and examine the peaceful protests that happened during the civil rights era here in this country, okay, you need to understand that, the peaceful protests, they did sit-ins, and you had the cops trying to break it up, and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff like spraying people down with water cannons and arresting them. But as they were arresting them, they'd pull them away, and you can see in the film and that kind of thing, you could see these people getting, as they're being arrested, they're being carried off, they're being drugged, whatever. And so that's the thing, is that we need to understand that these protests, you can protest, stand on the side of the road with your sign, take over, or don't take over, but stand on an overpass and put up a sign and that kind of stuff. Those are what the peaceful protests are all about. But the minute you start blocking people off, the minute you start blocking traffic, the minute that you start impacting others' lives, that becomes a bit of a problem. And especially if you start to engage with the police in a negative fashion, all right? When you start attacking the police, you start spitting on the police. People don't know this, but when you spit on somebody, that is actually, especially coming from the days of AIDS, even not saying that we don't have it anymore, but coming from those days where we didn't have an actual medical solution for them, that was assault. And that was, that was things that there's plenty of stuff that could go on with it, with your health and everything else. And so, hey, you gotta use this thing wisely. You gotta use the right that you have wisely. And to sit there and to expect other people, especially Jews in this case, the Jewish people that are going to these campuses. I mean, Columbia went and shut down their on campus, as I was saying last night. They shut down the whole campus for on premise or in person classes because of a fear of violence. And that's not peaceful, people. That's not peaceful. And it's even gotten so bad that the quote unquote peaceful protests are now turning into where they have riot police surrounding. Now, I also showed some video last night of the teachers that are surrounding it. But, hey, if you want to go and, like Buddy says, let them live in a stupid tent, just stay out of the way. And that's the whole key, is that if you want to live in the tent, go ahead. But you don't have to block other people's movements. This kind of falls into the same thought that I was having. There was a conversation. I can't remember which show it was on. It was either, it was Sean's show, Sean Parnell's Battleground Live right here on Rumble, which goes, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern time every day of the week, Monday through Friday. But Sean was showing the video footage of, Alec Baldwin being accosted in a coffee shop by a rabid leftist trying to get him to say free Palestine or some crazy crap like that. And here's the thing is that these people, I got a little gnat in the room here. These people, whether they're rabid leftist, Hollywood type famous people or whatever, they just you need to leave them alone. Give them a life, a private life too. They're not always being famous. They're not necessarily always on duty. And when I see a famous person, for an example, I've seen Pete Carroll, who used to coach the Seattle Seahawks. I've seen Dog the Bounty Hunter. I've seen, I can't even think of any number of, back when we had the Sonics, the Supersonics. I can't even think of how many numbers of those folks. When they're just walking through and taking in public spaces and not doing like a actual public meet and greet event, you just leave them alone. And that's kind of what you need to see with this entire situation is the same thing, is that we need to essentially just understand that blocking people and getting them into corners and things like that, that's not right. That's not peaceful. That's definitely not something from a respect standpoint that you would have to deal with. And unfortunately, I mean, sometimes you do end up, especially keep in mind too, that when according to the laws, when things get out of hand, okay, you can't go and just, interfere with other people's lives. You just can't. That's the whole purpose of America, is you live your life freely without affecting others. That's a basis of America's situation. Now, one thing that is happening, this is from the Midwesterner News out of Michigan. Take a look at this. These flyers were circulating at the University of Michigan Gaza camp. And at the very bottom, it stated, "Freedom for Palestine means death to America." Now, here's the thing, folks. You're here. If you're on a student visa or something like that, you're here by the graciousness of America. By allowing you to come here and to study and to learn, we as the country, are giving you an opportunity that you may not have received elsewhere. And so you should be respectful and thankful for the fact that you are here. And so therefore, running around and saying stuff like death to America, well, that's a real turnoff to Americans. At least the real Americans, not the bull crap leftist morons that are taking over the Democrat Party. Those people are just, they're jumping in on this. But as you can see, and honestly, I'm gonna be honest, the Chaz Chop back in 2020 kind of set these people up. For those of you who are on Rumble, you can take a look and see the photo, but there's a Brendan Gutenschwager. Brendan Gutenschwager on X posted a video. I'm not going to play the video, but here in the thumbnail for the video, you'll see this libertide zone or libertide or whatever zone. I mean, here we are. We've got people who believe that they can just automatically set up a zone and say, hey, we're no longer part of America. That's bullcrap. You're still in America. You're still taking advantage of all that America has to offer. And if you can't sit there as a guest in our country, if you cannot sit there and and realize that you are a guest here and to abide by our laws and our customs and everything else, then you need to just go back. You need to just go back. And the same goes for anyone who even was born here. Honestly, if you were born here in America and you being given the privilege, the honor of sitting here in this country and taking advantage of all of the wonderful things that this country has provided, and you're going to sit here and say death to America? You need to go to another country and figure it out. You need to go and see what the rest of the world actually has to deal with for a time. Honestly. Go. Just go away. Don't go away mad. Just go away. You need to go elsewhere. You need to experience what you are even talking about. And honestly, for those groups like the Queers for Palestine or Gays for Palestine, you people have got to be the most moronic people I have ever seen in my entire life, because they would quickly throw you off a roof and take your life. They don't give a crap whether you are part of the LGBTQ plus minus divided sign ampersand whatever group. They don't care. They are essentially religious zealots. And believe me, they're not going to care. They're going to throw you off. They think you're stupid. They think you're dumb. And yet here you are talking about freeing Palestine. Yeah, that's not something, I'm sorry, but you guys are barking up the wrong tree there with that completely. But anyway, so if you're in one of these places, here's an image. You can see this image here from Josh Brown on X. You can see this image. All of these tents that have the green tops on them, they're all the exact same. They're all the exact same, okay? And so there is a suggestion, of course, that they were all bought at the same time. There's also some pictures, too, that I've seen from Columbia University. There were like a bunch of bricks stacked on pallets. sitting there. And it's sort of like what happened with the, with the whole Chaz Chop thing and a riot thing, where all of a sudden piles of bricks would show up out of nowhere. And they're on freaking pallets, folks. They're stacked on pallets. They had to get trucked in. They had to get unloaded by a freaking truck or a forklift. So where in the hell did this stuff come from? If you don't think these things are not organized, and there's actually videos of like when Antifa was doing all of those riots during the Summer of Love, they are all tied in with an organized scenario. They're all tied in with that. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. Let me tell you something about this wonderful, fantastic shirt that I am wearing, okay? You look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, that shirt makes him look good. I want that shirt. And any of the other shirts that I wear, by the way, you can get one for yourself. You can get it by going to theflagshirt.com. That's right, theflagshirt.com. You can go and get it. And hey, I have a special code that allows you to grab a coupon for $5 off. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online, and you can get a code for $5 off your order. You take that code, you put it in at checkout, the promo code box at checkout, and you can get $5 off your order, all thanks to the American Perspective Show with Rick Thomas. Go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. Let me just show you a little bit. So here is theflagshirt.com. And I wear, the ones that I wear, of course, I'm a man. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm a man, but I wear the cotton polo shirts. These are my favorites. And in fact, I even just ordered 2 or 3 others that I don't have yet in order to wear them here on the show. So you should go and check it out. There's ladies wear, there's hats, there's ties, there's socks, there's all kinds of stuff that you can get right here at theflagshirt.com. And of course, before you go to theflagshirt.com, you should go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online and get your $5 off code for your purchase. Go and check it out and get patriotized today. All right. Now, one thing that appears to be happening in this world, in the world that we live in, it's not only just the censorship, but it's also the ability to censor our places and things, and the go and censor all of our speech and what we listen to and everything else. It's straight out of 1984 in just all kinds of things. As far as like the whole utopia world and they show you what you are supposed to think and everything else. Well, Chip Roy has raised the alarm on something that is happening right here, right now in this country. Check out this article in Fox News. Chip Roy raises alarms about George Soros' purchase of the radio giant Audacity. Audacy. That's right. You can find a TGRN there on Audacity. But George Soros is, for those of you that don't know, about a year ago, roughly, George Soros went and bought up a whole bunch of Spanish-speaking radio stations. And the reason being is because he is attempting to influence you by controlling what you see, by controlling what you hear. And this is a big problem. Now, in this particular case, George Soros went and he picked up $400 million in debt held by Audacity, which is the second largest broadcast radio station owner in the country. Of particular concern, the Soros groups are now asking the FCC to approve a change in ownership in Audacity without the FCC running its normal statutorily required process. This is what Roy said in a letter. Okay. This transaction, which affects radio stations that reach millions of listeners across the U.S., including Texas's 21st congressional district, should, at a minimum, be subject to rigorous FCC oversight to ensure U.S. radio stations are not subject to, and listen to this sound, undue influence. Folks, we all know that George Soros is like one of the most evil people in this world and is constantly attempting to take over and destroy essentially the United States through all kinds of political means. We know that a lot of his funded entities and political groups have taken over DAs within Democrat cities and so on and so forth. But this is not good, people. And if you think, places that, again, keep in mind, the hive mind of the left and the mainstream media has caused literally a mental breakdown of a lot of the leftists who are out there who believe in all kinds of stories that have been completely debunked by the right. And yet here we have George Soros. He's going and trying to go after the second largest radio broadcast station or broadcast ownership company for radio stations all over. And you don't think that he's going to buy that up and then, of course, exert influence? Yeah, that right. I got a bridge in frickin' Arizona that leads to the ocean that I would love to sell you for that crap. Anyway, speaking of radio stations that influence you, check this out. I saw this, and this actually is the title for today's show, which is that the woke NPR places trigger warnings on the Declaration of Independence. What the F? Okay, so here's the thing, all right? The Declaration of Independence is actually read in its entirety every Independence Day by NPR. Well, if you go and take a look in their archives, okay, for those audio broadcasts, you can actually find the editor's note added on July 8th of 2022 in this particular sense. And it says, and I quote, "This story quotes the U.S. Declaration of Independence, a document that contains offensive language about Native Americans, including a racial slur." Including a racial slur. Now, okay, so wait a minute. So the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which is a historical document and was put on the map and put on the timeline, was one of the key indicators or the key foundational documents that pushed us as Americans to get rid of things such as slavery, to represent and respect women and provide them with the opportunity to vote some years down the line. That the decision or that the stipulation and the idea that all men were created equal in the eyes of God, our Creator, and therefore all should be set up as an equal stance in our country, that has set up with the ideals that started with the Declaration of Independence to the point of today where people can be free and do the things that we do, and do, like me talking to you right now. this is what our country is all about. Well, I did a little bit more digging, and apparently this isn't the only time they actually went through and had discussions about the history of the Declaration of Independence and examined that line of all men are created equal. And of course, they kind of, they disparage it, let's say, with this. And they it was announced earlier this week or late last week that NPR was leftist woke dribble, and not like anybody that actually listened to it, didn't already knew this. But they not only that, but they talk about a racist passage in the Declaration of Independence. Now, here in particular, what they are discussing is the Clause 27 within the Declaration of Independence. Now, for those of you that don't know or don't remember or forgot all about your freaking civics classes or U.S. history classes, the Declaration of Independence was a letter written from the American colonies over to the King of England, King George, I believe it was. And they listed multiple what they considered usurpations and slights that he did toward the American colonies. Well, one of the things that was written, and according to the interview, and this is a transcript, what you're seeing on the screen is a transcript of the interview. According to the guest was talking about Clause 27, but he calls out the fact that during the debate in June and May, in June or May and June, actually, is what he says, May and June of 1776, the members of the Continental Congress, and here I'm quoting from the transcript, members of the Continental Congress invited 21 Iroquois chiefs to Independence Hall, and they are there during the debate over the Declaration of Independence. Now, he's saying that this has been obscured and not talked about. Now, in particular, apparently in Clause 27 or Grievance 27, this is the quote, essentially, from it. They say he, meaning the King of England, has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguishable destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So what this Clause 27 or whatever they are putting out here, they are essentially saying that that the American colonists claim that the King of England allowed and pushed and did things to excite the local Indian tribes. Now, for those of you that don't recall, a couple of those tribes actually helped out, and obviously the Iroquois helped because they were invited to come to Independence Hall and talk about it. And yet there is one glaring thing that this guy doesn't mention, which essentially is that the history of the tribes, of the native tribes here in America, consistently contained with war. That they would constantly raid each other. They would constantly attack each other. They would consistently, rape and murder other tribes in a constant battle. In fact, some tribes that were here believed that battle was how you hardened a warrior, and they actually encouraged doing that. So the idea that by basically trying to gloss over the idea that these other tribes were not already warlike before we even got here, and the fact that by stating that as a fact, that is a racist argument or a, uncomfortable truth, has led NPR to put a warning on it saying that this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I can't even continue down this path. This is just crazy. If you can't sit here and look at our history and understand that American history, while not always good, while not always the best of what we have done, we still are the greatest country on this planet. And to gloss over this or to put a trigger warning and say, oh, this could trigger your sensibilities. Let's just put it this way. Wake up, smell the coffee, and understand that at times there are some very nasty, nasty things that have happened in our history. You need to learn from it, not cover it up, not give it a warning so people can't, people won't be exposed to it. They have to be exposed to it. That's the whole point in all of this, is to be exposed, to learn from the negativity in history, and not to sit there and cover it up and protect people from it. This is just absolutely crazy. And if you think that George Soros thing, by the way, is going to go away, I guarantee you it's not. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And we're just, we're going to have some serious problems. Speaking about somebody who honestly really doesn't understand history. I mean, look, the Democrats, just to kind of shift gears here, the Democrats have sorry, I'm chuckling because Becky, who is our resident Aussie, she writes, "I'm triggered now. Australia first." Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you guys. Sorry. Side note. Let's get off track here. All right, really quick. We're gonna get off track. Becky, apparently your country has gone after Elon Musk to get him to stop or take down a video of a very horrific act that happened in your in your neck of the woods. And so, yeah, I am censorship abounds everywhere, and I'm sorry that it's this is all over in the Western world. It really is what's happening here. So anyway, all right. So back to the show. One thing that has happened here recently is as we start moving up to, as we start moving into and up to the election, the left is going to start touting what they consider to be, essentially what they consider to be Biden's accomplishments. And one of those accomplishments that they are discussing and talking about happens to be all of the federal judges that have been confirmed through the Senate. And here's the thing, is that some of these judges, well, I mean, I've posted on social media, these judges are not judges. They are literally activists. And one of those activists, of course, outside of the Trump trials, okay, I'm not even going to talk about the Trump trials necessarily. At least I don't think, maybe there's a story about it here. But one of the things about the Trump trials is that it's pretty obvious that we have judges that are activists. We don't actually have like real jurists and judges much anymore. It seems like what ends up happening is we kind of are in a power struggle in our judicial system, from activists on the left side to the not so much activists, but still kind of not exactly middle of the road people in the the Republican side. Well, this came out this week, and I freaking cannot believe this. I am floored by this statement. In fact, I was so floored by the statement that the judge said that I actually had to look up the New York State Constitution in order to see if potentially there was a conversation with regards to guns within the state. So this came out in Red State. This is here. But the New York City man was convicted over a gunsmithing hobby after the judge says, get this, the Second Amendment doesn't exist in this courtroom. Another, what the F moment? What the F moments? The Second Amendment doesn't exist? Okay. Actually, it does, folks. It does exist. There's a reason for it, because when the states were admitted as parts of the Union, including the first 13, okay, they essentially all agreed that the Constitution would be considered the law of the land. A Brooklyn man, so this is from the piece. A Brooklyn man has been convicted. Now, what's even worse is those of you who are on Rumble, you'll see the photo. This guy is a person of color. Okay. He's a black man. A Brooklyn man has been convicted of 13 weapons charges after being arrested and charged in 2022 for building his own firearms. Dexter Taylor's ordeal could become a landmark Second Amendment case in light of the Bruin ruling handed down in the same year. Now, for those of you that don't remember, the Bruin ruling was the fact that the state couldn't block access or couldn't block people from owning firearms in New York City. Now, the jury found Taylor guilty of second-degree criminal possession of a loaded weapon, 4 counts of third-degree criminal possession of a weapon, 5 counts of criminal possession of a firearm, second-degree criminal possession of 5 or more firearms, unlawful possession of pistol ammunition, violation of certificate of registration, prohibition on unfinished frames or receivers. 2 lesser charges, including third-degree criminal possession of 3 or more firearms and third-degree possession of a weapon, were not voted on. So Taylor is a 52-year-old New York native and a software engineer, and he discovered the world of gunsmithing years ago. He decided to take it up as a hobby and possibly turn it into a business later. However, when a joint ATF-NYPD task force discovered he was legally buying parts from various companies, they opened up an investigation that led to a SWAT raid and an arrest. He is currently being held on Rikers Island. For those of you that don't know, Rikers Island is where all the hardened criminals go, and is awaiting sentencing there. So his conviction, of course, highlights the ongoing battle for gun rights. Okay, so here's the thing. So this guy created his own weapons. He built his own weapons. and was doing this as a hobby, not as like a business or anything. For those of you that don't really understand what happens, if a weapon gets created and it was handmade, hand created, and you are not producing it for resale later, for an example, you don't have to go and put a serial number on it. And this is actually what the government calls or uses the colloquial phrase of ghost guns to classify these things. Okay. So this guy was basically creating his own firearms, manufacturing them himself, even from parts. Now, that's the other thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand. For an example, you can purchase, or at least, well, up until they decide to do this, you can purchase a blank. So of the dreaded AR-15, for an example, which is essentially just a block of metal. And what you can do with that block of metal is you can modify it or take and finish it off yourself with your own tools and turn it into a fully functional firearm. Okay. By doing that, again, you don't need to, under current laws, you do not need to serialize the weapon. And so because of this, that's what they consider ghost guns. Now, here's the thing. If somebody, and under current law, if somebody were to want to pass that off or sell that gun, then that person would have to serialize it first before they could sell it legally. Okay. But that being said, okay, this guy is doing it as a hobby and potentially being a moneymaker later. So I would imagine he was going to get his federal firearms license, or what's known as the FFL. Okay. To do this on the side or whatever. And, yeah. So speaking of those ghost guns, this is just a travesty. I mean, the Second Amendment doesn't say that you have to buy manufactured firearms or that you have to carry manufactured firearms or that you have to do anything else, because it covers arms. Arms being everything to make a firearm functional. This is just a further attack on our Second Amendment rights and our rights to self-defense. Honestly. Well, the Supreme Court has actually decided to take up a case on these supposed ghost guns. They're going to hear a challenge. They've agreed to hear a challenge on the Biden ghost gun rule. Now, the high court previously reversed lower courts on blocking the regulations of guns that can be assembled at home, which is literally what the ghost guns are. So the Supreme Court agreed on April 22nd, this is April 24th, so 2 days ago, to consider the Biden administration's rules regulating so-called ghost guns that can be assembled at home. Oral arguments in the high-profile case are likely to take place in the fall. In October 2023, the Supreme Court reinstated the rule, which lower courts had enjoined. Ghost gun is a term used by gun control advocates to describe a homemade firearm that lacks a serial number and therefore cannot be tracked by law enforcement. Although some states regulate homemade guns, gun control groups have been trying for years to ban or regulate homemade guns at the federal level, but have failed to persuade U.S. Congress to act, which they actually can't. Because again, when you look at the Second Amendment, there's this thing at the end. It's called shall not be infringed. Anyway, Joe Biden previously has claimed, most of the time, that privately made guns, which are often made with gun kits, are weapons of choice for many criminals. How many freaking criminals do you know take the time to go and and create this gun. They don't care. They're not interested in manufacturing the weapon. They're not interested in how the damn thing works other than, can it fire a bullet and can I get my, whatever, my enemies or whatever taken care of? It just, this is just oh gosh. I'm going to be taking a close look at this when it does come up. I'm just going to say. So the government what they're specifically talking about is the frame or receiver rule that dates back to April of 2022. It requires individuals who assemble homemade firearms to add serial numbers to them. The rule also mandates background checks for consumers who buy gun assembly kits from dealers. Pieces of guns that are shipped are nonetheless guns subject to existing laws, the government argues. That's actually not true, because if it is not a fully functional firearm, that's not the case under current laws. Government's arguing is just the government is trying to argue something that just isn't right. When do they not do that? Okay. Speaking of guns and gun laws, Tennessee takes a step toward doing what is, I think, one of the actions that need to be taken in order to be able to protect our children and to deter these people who are going and shooting up schools. Like that most recent one that was deterred or caught. But here, Tennessee just passed today. And this is 1 year after the trans school shooter Audrey Hale opened fire in the Covenant School in Nashville. But Tennessee passes a bill letting teachers carry guns at schools. Now, there's been a lot of talk on X regarding this. The bill itself passed 68-28. And the idea, of course, allowing teachers to carry concealed guns on school grounds is basically setting up so that they can protect students and themselves from mass shooters. In other words, a good guy with a gun being able to stop a bad guy with a gun. Now, understand that this is not a requirement. And according to the law, teachers who opt to carry guns in school would have to be approved. Their identities would only be known to the administration, and parents would not be told if the teacher's if their child's teacher was actually carrying a firearm in class. To take part in the program, the law states that teachers would have to have gun permits as well as undergo a background and mental health check. They would also be required to take 40 hours of training to make sure that they were up to speed. Now, I'm just going to point something out to you. And I want you to think about this for a second. For those of you who are on the mind of, oh my gosh, this is the wrong kind of thing. And this actually falls into the debate that a lot of people have with regards to concealed carry versus open carry. Okay. My thing about this particular situation boils down to this. If you're going to carry a weapon, it should be concealed. And the reason being is because you want to be the one that nobody knows what you have. Rather be the danger that nobody is aware of than being the danger that everybody can tell. So whenever somebody open carries, that's your choice. You can open carry. Okay, great. But no different than things like finding that snake that's in the weeds or in the brush. There's a reason why dangerous items have camouflage. It's to protect themselves, but also to keep them hidden so that you could go walking by and never even know that the snake was there as long as you're leaving it alone, for an example. So the idea here of protecting these folks, protecting their names, keeping it from people, while, again, from a perpetrator's point of view, walking into a gun-free zone, okay, you know that if you walk into a gun-free zone, you are likely to not have any resistance in that space. That's part of the reason why the whole idea of the gun-free zone is ridiculous. Honestly, you're simply announcing to somebody, hey, I don't lock my doors at night. I don't lock up my valuables. Come in, take them. I don't care. That's not what this kind of situation is. Now, because this has been announced, and also, too, keep in mind, Texas has something similar, I believe, and they actually have signs up that say the teachers are armed and will take appropriate action to protect the students. As a perpetrator, one who wants to go and do as much damage as possible, to take as many lives as possible, okay? Would you want to walk into a den or into a school where you have no idea whether anyone happens to be armed? Or would you walk into a place where you know that no one is armed? There's this thing called the power of deterrence. And one of those powers of deterrence is making sure that people believe and think that there's a possibility that any one of these people that I encounter could stop me. That prevents people from actually doing stuff. Just like the ADT sign in front of your frickin' house when you have an alarm on your house makes a criminal second guess at least the normal yokel, local, just smash and grab kind of folks. Oh my gosh, I'm going to make a lot of noise by doing this, and I'm going to potentially get caught. So I'm going to go to the house down the street where it's a much easier target. That's been proven on multiple occasions. And that's been shown, studies have shown, and interviews have shown that anyone who is looking at a target, they're looking for the weakest one. And if you can have something like this, even if none of the teachers in this school are actually carrying, doesn't matter, because the possibility exists. And that is what gets into the mind of the criminal. If you know there was a possibility that you could not get away with something, it's going to make you second guess whether or not you should. So I'm all for a law like this. I appreciate a law like this. Okay, let me tell you about... Yeah, I'm a little late. But let me go ahead and tell you about the Institute on the Constitution. Folks, the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence that the NPR is putting, trigger warnings on, in the following three key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, The purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course materials and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Go and check them out today. And I appreciate them allowing me to be an affiliate of theirs. All right, so let's see. I've got about 20 minutes left. So here's one of the byproducts, honestly, of this entire situation where we are essentially not providing boundaries, not providing the right and wrong, the consequences of people's actions. As of right now, we don't have a boundary, in particular, when we're dealing with schools themselves. And the reason being is because, and look, okay, this particular story that I'm about to tell you is regarding a transgender student, but that's not the point. Even though this particular scenario was allowed to occur, mostly because of, or not necessarily, let me rephrase that, not allowed to occur, but did occur in the place that it was, that it happened. This still is beyond just the fact that this individual was transgender. Okay. And what's even worse is the fact that when you go and take a look, as you can see in this Red State article, when you take a look at the buildup to this activity, this is just horrific, honestly. This is just horrific in terms of the idea. And I've seen this throughout schools. And again, this doesn't necessarily have to deal with the idea that it's a trans student. I have actually seen it in our local schools for other things going on. And this is part of this is because of the fact that we have gotten to the point where we no longer stand up for right and wrong. We no longer provide a scenario where punishment fits the crime anymore. This is across all parts of justice. It doesn't even matter whether it's in school or anything else. But here, a Pennsylvania middle school girl confronts the school board when they ignored warnings of this student assaulting others. And this goes beyond the point of whether or not this individual was trans or not. So here's the thing. The individual, this 13-year-old girl, apparently went and was attacked, or sorry, not this person wasn't. 13-year-old attacked a 12-year-old student, beating her with a Stanley cup. Now, for those of you that don't know what a Stanley cup is, it is a very freaking large container, and it's very heavy. It's a insulated cup. It's an insulated mug, let's say, and it has an inner sphere and an outer sphere, and it's all made of all metal, and it's designed to obviously keep hot and cold. But it is also fairly heavy, and it comes with a handle on the thing where it can be used very, very effectively as a weapon. And that's exactly what happened here. But this isn't the part that really scares the crap out of me. And it's bad enough. It's bad enough in terms of the fact that this student was beaten. But here's the part that really boggles your mind. The student, or a friend of the student who was attacked, was part of this quote unquote hit list. And it wasn't just known just to the student body, but there were several other people who went and reported this potential attack to the teachers. And apparently the teachers themselves said, oh no, that's not going to happen. And they did nothing. According to this student who was testifying at the school board meeting, she went into the office, she filled out the proper paperwork. She told them it was going to occur sometime in the near future. In fact, her reports where she told about this occurred 5 hours before the attack actually occurred. And the teachers literally did nothing. They brushed off the possible incident, telling the girl who reported it, her name is Emily, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. Now, Emily was warned, apparently, was basically told that she should just watch her back in the lunchroom. But according to her testimony, she basically took teachers, counselors, and administrators to task for not heeding warnings and allowing it to happen. This is a quote from the school board presentation. You could have stopped it. It was 5 hours from when I told you it was going to happen. I don't get how you couldn't have stopped that. Emily went on to recount that the student was even brazen enough to yell, "I'm gonna murder you," several times at the other students. Now, this particular student, who again, regardless of whether, they were trans or not, doesn't make a difference, because this is a horrific act in any sense or shape of the word, beat this one student in the girls' bathroom, split her head open, and now she apparently is in the hospital with a brain injury. This is what we have gotten to, folks. The schools have been, and this happens, honestly, stuff like this happens all the time. It occurs in schools. The schools are not disciplining the kids because of this idea that discipline, especially in the form of corporal punishment, is a bad thing. That because we've gotten to be a society where everything, oh no, you have to have your safe space. Oh, these words and the stuff on the Declaration of Independence, oh my gosh, it's triggering me. And the thing about it is that we have gone so far to the point of you have to touch everybody with kid gloves. You cannot enforce the law. You cannot enforce, because, oh my gosh, they didn't have the victim or the perpetrator didn't have a father. So that's the reason why they did this. This is not normal, folks. This is not normal behavior. This is not normal societal behavior. To have our children be able to go and just assault another student is ridiculous. We had a conversation. I had a conversation with my daughter and her boyfriend. And they were talking about, hey, did you ever get spanked in elementary school? I never got spanked. But I can tell you that there were others that did. And the thing was, my principal at the time, whether or not it was actually used, I don't know. But again, this goes back to that whole power of deterrence thing. Had a paddle that had holes drilled in it so that it wouldn't get slowed down by the air resistance, but it was a wooden paddle. And she had it on the windowsill in her office for all to see. It was nice. It was lacquered. It was just this beautiful thing. I mean, fantastic as far as, the workmanship went. But whether or not she actually used it or not, I don't think it mattered. But I can tell you that when you got summoned to the principal's office in elementary school, you essentially were wetting your pants. And I did get called up because I did get into a fight in 5th grade. I did get into a fight with a 6th grader at the time at the bus stop. And so I was called up to the principal's office. Thankfully, I was on the defensive side. And so that way I didn't get any kind of repercussions from it. In fact, I even found out that my 5th grade teacher came to my aid in my defense, which was amazing. But the thing about it is that we have gone so far to where now we just simply not enforcing any kind of rules or standards within society today. That we are allowing this barbaric behavior to continue. Now, granted, when I was growing up, oftentimes if you were bullied or whatever, and you got into it, hey, you'd settle it with your fists if you had to. And yes, I did my share of fighting growing up. But the thing about it is that was literally the idea of a quote unquote fair fight was the situation. And if you ever got caught, you got into some serious trouble, whether it was, detention after school or getting paddled or whatever the case may be. And even going so far as to have those particular kids that had consistent trouble problems would get removed from the school and sent to a special school where there would be a lot more measures taken to protect not only the student themselves, but also the students surrounding them. We've given all that up. And we've gotten to the point where even the idea of having your parents told means nothing to these kids. I know I lived in fear oftentimes whenever my teachers would say, well, let me tell your parents. And my parents basically told me that, hey, whatever punishment you took in school, I guarantee you, if you did something bad enough and you come home with a story about it, your punishment here is going to be a lot worse. And in addition to what you got in school. Of course, it was on a case-by-case basis. It all depended upon what had occurred. But the point is that our society is breaking down to the point where stuff like this is going to become a lot more commonplace in this world if we keep allowing this stuff to continue. You would think that things like the Loudoun County School Board situation where a girl was actually raped in the girls' bathroom during school hours would be enough to wake these people up, to wake the world up to stuff like this. But I guarantee you, this isn't the end. And this is a byproduct of the idea that we are allowing society to just slip away. I'm glad that my children are at the point where they are almost out of normal school, but I feel bad if they decide to have kids of their own. I am really, really sad and scared for this world after this, after what's going on here. All right. So one thing about, tomorrow, just to give you a heads up, okay, tomorrow, the Supreme Court, I'll probably have something on this in tomorrow's show maybe, but this from the Epic Times. Tomorrow is the SCOTUS oral arguments for the presidential immunity case. And of course, Trump put out several tweets, or not tweets, but truths on Truth Social, several posts, and he's talking about the whole presidential immunity. So here's the thing. The left seems to believe that if Trump doesn't have presidential immunity, the left seems to believe that if Donald Trump gets presidential immunity, that would preclude that wouldn't preclude President Biden from being able to use SEAL Team 6 to just go and take out President Trump. And here's where I kind of think that this is going to go, because honestly, as the president, there has to be some level of presidential immunity. And the reason being is because there are things like, for an example, President Biden or President Obama, I don't remember, I think both of them did it. They sent out a drone strike and ended up striking civilians. If you remove presidential immunity for things like that, then that means that the families of those people can continually go after presidents in wartime or military engagements, and you will make it so that these people who are given this huge, enormous weight on their shoulders, cause to not go and do what must be done and risk the fact of making mistakes. They're going to be more concerned if they don't have presidential immunity. They're going to be more concerned over the mistakes than they are over the actual action. So there has to be a certain level of presidential immunity for the man or woman, I should say, sitting in that chair. There has to be a certain level of immunity from prosecution. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a blanket immunity. The thing about it is that while they are in office, they shouldn't be able to just get away with it. However, the founding fathers actually created the idea of the impeachment process, and this is part of the argument, with the idea that the president should have immunity while they are in office, and that the Senate the Congress having the power of impeaching him or her and removing them from office is the punishment for using presidential powers in a negative way. That's the whole purpose of where the Constitution was built on. And that's part of the reason why they called out not specifics, but called out things like high crimes and misdemeanors, bribery, and treason. These are the things that are in the case of the presidency. And this is where I believe that the Supreme Court should go. That while the president is in office, doing the office, the carrying out the duties of the office, that they have presidential immunity. Because anything else outside of that, and believe it or not, it actually opens up Biden. Because if SCOTUS actually says, you know what, presidential immunity doesn't exist, then what happens? Because murder itself has no statute of limitations. So that family that got drone striked, mistakenly drone striked, their offspring could come after, or their relatives could come after the American president who was in charge at the time, which I think might have been Biden. Or even better yet, Obama and the Benghazi 13 folks. could have or could come after Obama and sue him and put him on trial for murder. This case is going to have impacts that I don't think, once again, the left has essentially put out the idea that, hey, they don't even think beyond what is immediately right in front of them. The president needs to have a certain level of immunity from prosecution while carrying out the task and the office of the president. We'll see what happens. Oral arguments start tomorrow, so I will probably have something on this, maybe on tomorrow's show. Speaking about that, keep in mind, as I pointed out in the beginning of this program, I am beta testing, use a IT term, I am beta testing a 6-day-a-week format with the idea of eventually going to a 5-day-a-week format. But I will be transmitting Monday through Saturday. The Monday through Friday shows will be aired at the same time. Those are 5 p.m. Pacific. They start 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. The Saturday show stays at its same time at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So I'm hoping to see a lot more of you tomorrow. I transmitted last night. I broadcasted last night. Kind of surprising a few folks. But so, again, Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I will be all week long, as Bam points out. Whiskey all week long. That's right. I'm giving it a try. We're gonna try this for about a month and see how it goes. If I can get into the swing of things and I can figure everything out, then yes, I will be broadcasting a lot more regularly. But we'll have to see how this goes. But anyway, thank you all for joining. I do appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow night right here on American Perspective with Rick Thomas. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.